You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to subscribe to The Authenticity Show if you haven't already done so, and connect with us on social media. That means like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out our YouTube page. This episode is part 2 in our series on cognitive strategies. The first one was about nootropics, and this one is about physical and mental hacks that you can use to stay sharp and focused for longer periods of time.
Good morning, Satch.
Good morning, Carlos. I noticed you wished me a good morning rather than a good evening, which you normally do. So
I was just going to say that.
I help the listeners understand what is going on.
Yeah, well, for those who are not seeing the video but only listening to the audio of this, we are sitting in Oliver's new pavilion, which is quite nice, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous out here. We got some morning sunshine, and we might actually be picking up other sounds. Yeah. This is the first time we're recording out here. Oliver has chickens.
Yes, we're not torturing little children.
Yeah, it does sound like
FYI.
Like children in the background. So we'll see how the chickens behave. But this is an authentic show, and we're in a real live environment. And who knows what we might hear and what we might pick up. But
that's true.
But who knows what we might end up revealing and talking about in this episode?
You never know.
Carlos, our last episode was about strategies to enhance cognitive abilities, the ability to think better, to pay attention better, things like that. And we really got into nootropics in that episode, and this is kind of a part 2 of that.
And we only scratched the surface on nootropics, just saying. There's so much more that could be said.
Yeah, and we probably will get into more nootropic stuff later on, kind of more advanced things. So if the last episode on cognitive enhancement was about things that you can ingest, this one is going to be about more body-based strategies that don't involve things that you put in your mouth or in your body, but things that you do with the body or maybe even the mind.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things that I think anybody who's gone to school for a really long time, or worked in a profession that is very demanding, on the brain, these are the types of strategies that help those people make it. You know what I mean? These are the strategies that have helped me make it, and I've picked them up over the years. I'm sure you've picked up a lot over the years. Yeah. Let's share our hacks.
Sounds great.
All right. So, you ever noticed that you might be sitting in a room, and the room has become monotonous? Maybe you're in a teaching situation where somebody's lecturing, or maybe you're just reading a book in your living room. And all of a sudden, the refrigerator shuts off. And it's a deafening silence.
Yes.
And you realize that sound from that refrigerator was taking up space not only in the environment, but also in your brain. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how a sound can shut off, and it can really enhance your ability to suddenly become aware of the room, to become aware of your body, to become more aware of what you're doing, right? And there's more alertness that goes along with that.
And the flip side of that is that in the example of suddenly hearing or noticing that there's a little whining pitch to the TV that was on, you ever had that?
Oh, yeah.
Or the whir of the fan in the computer that you hadn't noticed until right now.
Right at that moment. It was there the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a feeling of relief that's in the body. I think a lot of people have related this to me as well. When they finally get it off, they do this thing. They go, "Ugh."
Exactly. It comes with a sigh.
Exactly. And they go, "Ugh," like, wow.
Uh-huh. Oh, definitely.
Like if they finally pulled a splinter out or something.
Right. I've noticed the same thing if I realized that my jaw was tight or my shoulders were tense.
Yeah.
And I went, oh my gosh, that part of my body was tense. Why am I holding on to that?
Right.
And I let go. And what do? Oh, what a relief. Whether it's physical or mental, there's some kind of version of a sigh that happens. So what's going on from like a neuro perspective is in everybody's brainstem, right? That spot where your spinal cord connects to your brain Like if your brain was stuck on a spike, that spike is
Ouch.
the brainstem. I know.
That sounds like a real headache.
Yeah. So if your brain is sitting on top of your spinal cord, that thickened transition between the spinal cord and the brain is the brain stem. And it's a very, very old, very ancient part of the nervous system. And it's a part of the nervous system that we share with creatures that are down there on the chain, evolutionary wise, lizards and frogs and newts and stuff like that. There is this structure inside this brainstem called the reticular formation, or the reticular activating system, the RAS, reticular activating system. The word reticular, by the way, is just Latin for net. Like if you were to cast out a fishing net, a fishing reticulum or something like that, right? So it's a structure in the brain that has the job of constantly paying attention to the environment. It's always listening. It's like the microphone on your phone with Google.
It's like the NSA.
Yeah, it's always listening, okay? And its job is to alert the rest of the nervous system that there is a change in the environment, whether that's something that was added to the environment or something that was taken away from the environment or just anything like that. When suddenly there is a change in the environment, the reticular formation fires and it increases our alertness. It makes us suddenly aware. Why am I talking about the reticular formation? Because we can use it to our advantage on purpose. And one way of enhancing cognitive abilities, a strategy for paying attention better, for conjuring up more brain power, is to purposefully give the reticular formation something to fire about. And in occupational therapy practice, we do this a lot with kids with attention deficit disorder or various situations where we want these kids to be able to pay attention better. And you can do it by providing sensory input to any of the sensory systems in the body. What could make your nervous system pay more attention more than something like falling over, right? We've all had that feeling where we're starting to fall asleep or nodding off. And your body, so your reticular formation goes, wait a minute, there's a serious change going on in the environment that involves your body and you could get hurt. So it fires you awake. So
it's like a Star Trek episode where they need to reroute the power from the warp drive into the forward shields or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right, exactly, right. So suppose you're studying, you're reading, you're having to pay attention to a webinar, something like that, and you're getting sleepy. Here's what you do. Choose a sitting surface that will force you to have to keep your balance.
Like a Swiss ball.
A ball.
Physio
yeah.
ball.
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of big therapy ball, exercise ball. In occupational therapy, we use something called a T-stool, which is like this, imagine a wooden T that's just high enough to sit on like a little stool, right? So when you put your butt on it, you're balancing on a peg.
Ah, yeah.
And so by keeping your balance, you're engaging your core, right? And that will keep your reticular formation constantly firing to help you pay attention. And you can pay attention for literally hours when you sit on something like that. So something as simple as changing your seated surface can give you hours of paying attention.
Gosh, I'm wanting to purchase one of those. It's called a T-stool.
It's called a T-stool.
Love
yeah,
it.
yeah. Or, like you said, like an exercise ball. Mm-hmm. That's a great thing to sit on. Makes a big difference.
This is interesting because when we did our Vipassana, of course, you're seeking that perfectly balanced, symmetrical, poised position to hold yourself in.
Yes, you're completely in that meditative posture.
Yeah. And even within that, there are just ever so subtle shifts of pressure where you may feel one sits bone more than another or something, or there's sensations that may need adjusting, the placement of your palms or whatever. Little shifts in the way you hold your shoulder blades and the tilt of your chin and various things that finding that poised, balanced position that isn't stiff, but has a certain natural buoyancy to it, a natural lift, a natural fullness, so that you can maintain being in a position for an hour
Right.
or more.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
It's hard to do. Yeah, it really is.
Definitely.
But I sense all those things you're talking about, even within that isolated situation, because you're really, really focused on that. And I know in as you know, I take these really long seminars, and it's very common for me to get up, get to the back of the room, stand at the back of the room when I start getting tired, especially after lunch.
Yeah.
You come back, your blood sugar's doing what it's doing. The blood is also down in your tummy. You're trying to pay attention, and so sometimes I'll, get up in the back and stand and do some stretching while I'm listening to the person lecturing and teaching.
Yeah.
Or I'll even, get on the ground and go in a V stretch and start to kind of get my body ready to take the rest of the day, however many hours are left. And it does help me focus. It helps me to stay in a place where I'm not missing vital information.
Oh, yeah. Or if you're lucky enough to be in a chair that has armrests, just to do an armchair push-up, and just bear some weight, through your upper extremities and kind of put some traction on the spine. All of that is firing all kinds of sensations into the body and going through that reticular formation and waking up the brain,
Yeah, definitely. In a couple of the workshops that I've been to, they did something called brain gym exercise. Have you ever heard of those?
Yeah, I think I have. But
I don't know a
how
whole
do they
lot
do it?
about it, but the theory behind it is that it activates neuronal connections through physical balancing and crossing over of the midline to encourage better flow of information back and forth. And so they have stated that by doing this every so often throughout your day, it increases your readiness to learn and receptivity and the smooth functioning of your brain. And so a couple of my teachers, Jonathan Altfeld and James Casados, we would take breaks every so often to do, various kinds of, exercises. It can be as simple as, drawing a square on one side of your body and then drawing a circle with the other side of the body, then switching.
Yeah.
And then reversing the direction of those movements.
Right. That's
Or,
great. I love it.
having your arms out at arm's length to the sides and then looking forward and then, either slowly touching the nose or touching the fingertips together.
Yeah, like try not to.
Without looking at it. And then doing it with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
And then, another good one is, touching the reverse heel. So your left hand would touch your right heel behind your back.
Okay.
And then right hand would touch your left heel behind your back, and you just do this back and forth.
Right.
There's a whole variety of them. There's one where, you're drawing, James taught me this one where you draw a circle with one arm going down towards your belly from your chest, and the other one is a circle coming up above your head and down to your chest. Right. And then you make them go into figure eights. So that one arm, and then you have the other hand doing the other. So you're basically doing figure eights.
Yeah, and it takes you a minute to kind of get that figured out.
Yeah, and once you got this smooth action happening, it tickles a little bit. I mean, you kind of feel like something's shifted, and you do feel more alert, but relaxed.
Definitely.
There's a lot of fun stuff like that.
Definitely. Oh, I love those kinds of strategies.
I wish I knew all of them. They're good. It's probably something I'll get into later.
Definitely. Well, developmentally, children have to learn how to cross the midline. It's like we're not born with this ability to take our right hand and reach across to the left. We have to learn how to do that. It's like, I think of it as like the midline of your body is like the transition between going underwater and out of water. It's like the right side of the body needs to learn how to plunge into the depths of the left, and vice versa. It's a skill that, even children take for granted, but it's a skill that we had to learn at one point. So I love hearing these exercises because they do that. They challenge the nervous system to do that. And in fact, that's one of the things that goes away with certain neurological conditions. For example, when people have had strokes, they neglect one side of the body. It's like they lose one side of the world, or they lose the ability to twist the trunk. People with Parkinson's disease tend to develop this rigidity in their frame where their whole body turns to the left, their whole body turns to the right. And then what we do in therapy is we try to break that up. We try to get the upper body turning right while the lower body's turning left, or trying to break up that rigidity because it's a physical manifestation that is representing lost abilities in the nervous system, which could affect thinking too. So it makes sense that those exercises would do that.
It's neat how when I see you demonstrating it, I mean, you could easily pretend. I mean, as an actor, because you've acted a lot, but also as an occupational therapist, you could easily imitate these things, and it would be pretty convincing.
It would be fun. I would actually savor getting roles like that. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
When I was first learning about this idea of sensory integration theory and using the reticular formation, I immediately had memories of our Qigong practice. The things that you and I have been doing for years.
Yeah.
These Tai Chi, Kung Fu, warm-up exercises. And they were doing that for me the whole time. Before I ever knew about this, I was doing Qigong practice in between study breaks and at work breaks and enhancing my ability to perform. So have you noticed that Qigong practice gives you cognitive abilities?
100%. Yeah. I have a sense of calm, focused, I say calm, it's like my body feels relaxed and warm, but there's I would call it a balanced feeling.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I can pay attention better.
Yeah.
Just doing a little bit of standing Qigong, some arm swings, some deep breathing, a couple of postures can be enough easily.
Yeah.
To really connect me. And it lasts for a while. I mean, depending on how exhausted I am, right? Mm-hmm. The more exhausted I am, the shorter the time range that it lasts.
Yeah.
I'll have to do more.
Yeah. You have to go charge your battery again.
Yeah. And so there's kind of diminishing returns if you're not sleeping, but it can help. Mm-hmm. I mean, even just like something as easy as just gently leaning over and touching the toes and working on relaxing, releasing from the base of the spine all the way up to the top of the neck, loosening the shoulders, surrendering the muscles and the backs of the hamstrings, loosening the glutes a little bit as I'm kind of rolling forward, and then slowly arching up and feeling those connections as I kind of, like a pulley system pulling from the lower lumbar region all the way up into my cervical.
Love it.
And then just sitting still for a moment and allowing the blood to shift.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff can be really, really helpful even if you're tired.
Oh yeah.
Because you get a flush of blood into your brain. You get a little bit of lengthening in the nerves, the nerves themselves get a little bit stretched gently, so it kind of pulls the kinks out of any kind of muscular tension. Your bones get back in alignment.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah, it's
gosh,
great.
I love it. You're like, this is like verbal romance for me. Just hearing you explain all this stuff, like my body wants to do that. In fact, I do want to point out that just as we started having this conversation, our very own Oliver decided to go over and do some stretching and some Surya Namaskar, some yoga, and good inspiring stuff. They say that even watching somebody else do Qigong or Tai Chi practice or yoga, still, because of the mirror neurons in the brain, still affects the person watching. So like, even though I can't do yoga right now, I can look at Oliver and see him doing it, and I'm getting some of the benefit.
There's a famous story about that.
Would you please tell that story?
Yeah. So for those who are knowledgeable about Tai Chi Chuan, the martial art, they may have heard that there's a style called Yang style. There are several styles, but Yang style is like one of the most popular forms, and there's a couple of different forms of Yang, but the large frame Yang form, the one that most people know and think about when they think of Yang form, was pieced together and created, that form, by a man named Yang Chengfu. Yang Chengfu was the younger son of Yang Luchan, who made Tai Chi famous.
Okay.
By bringing it to the Forbidden City. And so anyway, the large frame Yang, just like it sounds, has very large movements. And Yang Chengfu was a very big man.
Yeah, he was a husky boy, wasn't he?
He was. He ate a lot, and he was big, Northern Chinese, big boned. And so the postures in the large frame Yang are easier to do because they're bigger. There's less compression going on in the joints. There's less flexibility needed for it. but it's a good all-around exercise. You know, as we know from studying from Tony, there's the small movements that are really what make it special.
Yeah.
But the larger movements are good for your circulation, your general alignment, and things like that. And so you can still learn a lot from it. Anyway, when he was younger, another very famous teacher named Zheng Manqing,
Yes.
who's the master of the 5 excellences in Robert W. Smith's book, Chinese Boxing, Masters and Methods. And he came to New York after a while. He's a skinny guy, a long white beard. You know, he did calligraphy and sword work, and he had a lot of American students eventually. But Zheng Manqing was very ill. I think he had tuberculosis and a whole lot of other problems, but he was bedridden. And somehow, I don't know how the trail happened, but somehow the trail led to Yang Chengfu coming to teach him. But since he was in a bed and couldn't do anything, Yang Chengfu did nothing but Qigong and Tai Chi in a small space. So granted, he was probably not doing the large Fram Yang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
He was doing a smaller version.
But even though it is said that Yang Chengfu was the least of his brothers in skill, because he didn't really want to do Tai Chi. He didn't like it. He wanted to escape and hang out with the prostitutes and do opium all day.
Yeah, he was the bad boy.
He was the bad boy who resisted his family tradition. But nevertheless, he gained quite a reputation because he was forced to study and he became pretty tough and he was ornery.
Yeah.
And a big guy. So you combine all that together and there are very few people who could handle him.
Yeah.
So eventually he became famous as a teacher and he was paid to come teach Zheng Manqing. And Zheng Manqing could only be in the room and witness him doing this. And I remember as a kid reading about how he became healthy by having his teacher do the form in his room and he was absorbing the qi.
Yeah.
Right? That was the idea.
Yeah.
And so eventually he was able to sit up.
Yeah.
And then once he could sit up, he could do some of the upper body movements. And then eventually he got to where he could stand on his feet again. And then eventually he was doing the form and he was strong enough to be abused and smacked around by his teacher because that happened eventually too.
Wow.
But I'm not speaking to character here.
Yeah.
Only the idea that when we watch something, we absorb it. And
Totally.
man,
Yeah.
I just love that story.
I do too. Thanks for telling that story
Yeah,
because
sure.
it's a story I've heard, but I don't know it the way you know it.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to just hear all the names again and
Yeah.
and how it all came to pass.
Well, you've seen those experiments with the split wall, the fake arm, and the real arm.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, go on.
And it's hilarious actually if you watch with a hidden camera.
Okay.
Because over and over and over again there'll be people coming into this booth and there's this kind of real arm and they're tickling their arm and then the other person's arm and then they're tickling this fake arm, mannequin arm that's made of rubber or whatever, and suddenly by surprise the person will whip out a hammer and smash the hand.
Okay. Yeah.
And the person on the other end who's watching it, because of mirror neurons, jumps back and grabs their hand usually.
Okay, like they got hurt.
They got hurt, and then it takes a couple seconds for the sort of hallucination to wear off, and they realize, wait, nothing happened. And then they laugh in embarrassment at their own reaction because they become entranced and entrained neurologically to this very hypnotic situation where they get lulled into this idea that they're having the same thing. It's been done over and over again.
Wow. That's
and
beautiful. I love it.
It's probably not that different from what you've talked about, the mirror boxes.
Oh yeah,
for
mirror
people
box
with,
therapy.
Missing limbs and things like that.
Definitely.
Phantom limb pain and all that.
Yeah, that's wild.
Because it's happening in the brain, so that's happening in the brain too.
Yeah.
And when we watch these jackass videos or these total fail videos where, the guy's trying to climb up on something and then they land with their legs apart on a hard pole or something like that, and it smashes their nuts.
Yes.
And even just thinking about that, I leaned forward and squeezed my
me too.
thighs
I just
together.
did it right now, and I'm not even thinking of one.
Yeah, my thighs started coming together, and it's so funny how that works.
Yeah, we learn from each other, from each other's experiences.
We definitely do.
Oh, it's great. It's great. One of my favorite qigong inspired exercises is just patting the body.
Yeah.
You know, where for the people that are only listening to this and not seeing it, you know, you would start with taking one hand and just sort of firmly, but, you know, somewhat gently smacking the dorsum of your hand, the back of your hand, you know, and working your way up from your hand, up to your elbow, up to your shoulder, and then then open your arm up and then, you know, come down the underneath the inside of your arm all the way back down to your hand. You do that several times on both sides and hit your head, you know, smack your scalp and, you know, and then your face, and your trunk, your chest, and do the same thing with your legs. And, you know, there are traditions where you say, go up the limb this way and go down the limb that way. But really, at the end of the day, you just kind of gently smack your body around.
Yeah.
It works really, really well.
It works really, really well. You know, we've been doing that exercise since we were probably, I don't know, young teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear by it.
Me too. Yeah.
You know, even my mom, she's so cute. She does that too. She does, and she loves it too, like that feeling. She'll do that, kind of pat her body down, and then she just feels kind of warm and, you know, gets that circulation going.
Yeah.
Kind of wakes up the, you know, tendons and little microcirculation in the body. And I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
me too.
and shaking. Like
yeah,
shivering.
shaking. Yeah.
Like a shimmy. A lot of the belly dancers, you know, they can do all this kind of fine motor control with their shaking. And
I don't know how Shakira does it.
I know. Totally, Shakira. But I do that and I feel more alert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
And better. I just feel looser and warmer.
Yeah. You know, it not only does it affect your nervous system, but it affects your immune system, right? Because it gets all your lymphatics moving.
Totally.
And it kind of shakes your organs, you know. Isn't it good to shake your kidneys and your liver a little bit and help them filter what they need to filter? You know, it's good stuff. So it's good for us all around. I also like when you rub your hands together to create friction and get your hands hot, and then vigorously rub the face and the scalp and the ears and the neck. You know, just you know. Rub the hands together. You know, we've all done this, and you can feel the hands getting hot. And not only are you doing this, but you're exercising your upper extremity muscles. And then rub your face, you know, and just rub your face really, really well. You can maybe hear what I'm doing here, and you know, do that a bunch of times, and don't just do it a little bit. You know, do it a lot. You know, I used to always follow the tradition of do it 36 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 36 times, and then do your scalp 36 times. Do your ears, you know, maybe 18, right? Because it takes a long time on your ears, right? And doing these things doesn't just make a little bit of a difference. It makes a big difference in your entire experience of your body and your environment.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, along those same lines, palming your eyes.
Oh, yes.
I love that.
Yes.
The same thing where you warm the hands by rubbing them together. And then you place the centers of your palms directly over your eyes, cupping it. And you focus on the heat from your hands going into the eyes, relaxing the muscles. And what I like to do, this helps particularly if you have a headache, is I picture as though I'm looking at the moon.
Oh,
So this is an interesting hack for a headache.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and what it takes is you got to really remember, what does it look like when you look at the moon? So anybody who's looked at the moon, there's a certain, you know it's far away, so there's a certain thing that your eyes are doing. So for eye strain, once you palm the eyes, you need to make your eyes do what they would do if they were looking at something far away.
Got it.
And the image is the moon. The moon is silvery. It's a nice color of light. Yeah. It's just kind of relaxing and cooling. And so when you do that, it can sometimes create an instantaneous relief from a headache. It's powerful.
Yeah.
And if it comes back, you just do it again.
That is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. And of course, it does help that you're, you know, suggesting to yourself that this will work.
Yeah.
That's important too. But it's not just the suggestion. It's also, there's something going on with how it changes your focus and the warmth and so you want to look at your palms with your eyes open at this point. So your palms are, your eyelids are closed when you're palming the eyes. But when you look into your palms with your palms still covering your eyes, you open the eyelids and you look.
Okay, so you actually open your eyes.
Yeah, and you just with all of your imagination, imagine that you are looking at the moon far away.
Got it. Okay. I love that.
Yeah, so
Oh,
it
that's
does
great.
something. I don't know if it sort of resets the muscles or
Yeah.
what it does, but I've noticed that when I have an eye strain headache, it just goes right away.
Yeah.
It's not going to work with a sinus headache probably.
Uh-huh.
It might,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's
sure,
probably for eye strain headaches, things like that.
Yeah.
Very much
Okay.
a help.
You just reminded me of a similar eye-based strategy that helps with just like if you're really groggy and tired in the morning, which is me on a lot of mornings, or if you have jet lag, something like that, is to, I think I picked this up years ago from a Deepak Chopra book. Okay, is you go out, in broad daylight, close your eyes, and turn your face towards the sun like you were looking at the sun, but with your eyes closed. And just enjoy turning your head side to side with your eyes closed.
I've done that.
And just let the photons from the sun just pour through you. So your eyelids create a little safety screen. And you can't do it for very long. It still is pretty intense to the eyes. And you just turn the head side to side and just let the light fill the back chambers of your eyes and just try to catch all the nooks and crannies. It's really energizing.
I was
to the
just going to
body.
say, it feels like you've had a little bit of an espresso shot. Like there's a certain, I don't know, I like to call it a spark. There's a feeling of brightness that lasts after the sun is gone. So the counter position, or the counter to that bright light is that you get that spot, like a dark spot.
Yes.
Right, in the eyes.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding is that outside of that, temporary dark spot that happens because of the reaction of the nerves in your eyes and cells in your eyes, there's a feeling of light, actually, imaginary or not, there's a feeling of light inside my head.
Yes.
After the fact.
Totally.
Like a spark has been
Definitely
ignited in some way.
Yeah, it's like an explosion of fireworks in your system.
Yeah.
It's almost like I think of it as like I'm drinking golden sunshine from a waterfall, like a sunshine waterfall, but you can't drink it from your mouth. You have to drink it through your eyes. I've always loved that strategy. So that's a good way to wake up. Yeah,
it is. There's a tradition where you massage the medulla oblongata area of the occiput in the back of the neck with your 3 fingers.
Oh yeah.
Circling 3 times one way, 3 times the other. I think this might come from Paramahansa Yogananda.
Okay.
Perhaps.
Okay.
It might be Kriya Yoga tradition. I don't know.
The Paramahansa.
I think I learned it originally from my mom, that particular thing.
Yeah.
And this idea of doing that and then turning the back of your head to the sun. And imagining that you're breathing in that light into the back of the head.
I have not done that.
Yeah, on an empty stomach.
Interesting.
That's kind of a yogic.
I think I feel like I want to
twist.
try that, but my stomach isn't empty. So maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow morning. That's great. Wow. Of course, in a lot of the Taoist traditions, there's the moonlight or starlight. The pole star meditation, where you merge the light from one of those celestial bodies with your Du 20 or Bai Hui point on top of the head. Just the top of your head. It's almost like that light is entering through the top of your head. And so like your light and that, it's more of a cooling kind of an experience. It would be appropriate for nighttime, and I love this one for daytime.
Yeah,
So great. That's great. So, Carlos, with all of your hypnosis and NLP training and martial arts and meditation and all of these different things that you've done, I'm wondering if you have any, besides the things that I'm talking about, and maybe you don't, maybe you do you have any other strategies that are kind of a different angle?
For improving cognition, definitely. One is, I always feel like getting rid of limiting beliefs around your learning process, your capacity to absorb information, your modifying your desire for the information.
Okay.
We tend to get good at the things we love. We tend to have more energy to put into the activity. So as you're doing self-examination, if you notice that there are things in the way, identify them. Write them out, say them out loud or whatever it is so that you know what they are.
Yeah.
And then once you know what they are, you can deconstruct them. And that can be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have, well, this is something I haven't done that I could do, for example. As you know, we've talked about this before. I don't feel that I'm very mathletic. Right?
Yes.
That's
yes.
I haven't spent the time to reconfigure my approach towards that because I haven't had a strong motivation to do so.
Yeah.
And that is the thing, is if you have a strong motivation, that's helpful.
It is. It is. I think I get images and sensations of brain damage when I think of math. And my brain just doesn't want to do it. And it's like that's a limiting belief, though.
It is. It's absolutely a limiting belief. There's no question in my mind that we could be 100 times better at math than we are.
Yeah.
If we wanted to. It's just like what's on the priority list here for us. But just to speak about that, I was good at math when I was younger. I was always competing with other kids to be like the top all the time.
Oh.
And then I hit a certain point in high school where I gave up.
Interesting. Okay.
And it was limiting beliefs, probably installed due to emotions and things that were going on at the time. I had an extremely abusive teacher, and I was already dealing with that at home.
Yeah.
So
got it.
So I think I just inside decided my way of controlling this is to just go, I don't care. I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I shut it off.
Okay.
And as a result, that part of my brain has become lax and less functional because it's not being used. It's become atrophied in a way.
Stiff.
Yeah. However, I know that I could wake it back up if I did this, deal with my limiting beliefs, get really, really clear and deconstruct them so that I can start to reframe them, and then begin to install positive beliefs after figuring out what would be the exact remedy to the negative beliefs. Sine and cosine, right? So you can look at a frequency and when this up and down motion on the frequency scale.
Yeah.
You can sort of get the mirror image and it cancels out like noise canceling,
Right.
So I always think of it that way.
Okay.
This is a metaphor.
I like that.
It's a metaphor.
I like
but
that. Yeah.
but when you have a negative thought, you think, what is the equal and opposite thought here? What is the thing that would make that not possible? And I'll look at that and then I'll install that as a belief. So I've done this with others for learning purposes, for study purposes.
Okay.
The other is to recognize that when you're learning, your brain is going to go through its cycles. So sitting down for longer than 90 minutes to do one thing is asking your brain to do way too much. You need breaks.
Yeah.
15 minutes or whatever it is, take breaks.
Yeah.
If you don't sleep well, it's going to affect your learning. So you still have to kind of consider the basics. If you have no brain fuel that day, and if you're not sleeping, then of course your learning capacity is going to go down. But having said that, if you're still studying, you still need to take a break. 90 minutes is the max before you take a break.
Yeah.
You could take it earlier.
Oh yeah.
Depending on the person and the situation and the intensity level of learning. But how we control our breath as we're learning matters. So if you're noticing that you're breathing shallow, you'll start getting sleepy.
Yeah.
So deep, slow breaths will keep you relaxed and alert. If the inhalation and the exhalation are pretty much equalized, what happens is your nervous system goes into synchronization. So you have parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems kind of balancing themselves out.
Yeah.
And as we know that parasympathetic is your kind of rest and recharge and regenerate and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And our sympathetic nervous system, as you know, is all about the fight, flight, and all the activity and actions and And so when you balance those breaths out, then another thing can happen. This resonance between heart, mind, and head mind start to happen. So the body and the cerebral kind of consciousness start to become more capable of having a coherence of communication between the two of them.
Yeah.
And then what you're learning becomes potentially a broader range.
Yeah.
So not everything that you're learning will be, mathematical in nature, analytical in nature. Sometimes you might be learning things like cooking, or you might be learning martial art, or you might be learning maybe how to physically work on a computer, to changing components, and there's a mechanical element there. So there's lots of different things. Could be an art class.
Yeah.
But this kind of breathing opens up those capacities a little bit more. I'm being rubbed on by a kitty cat that
Yes.
popcorn.
Cat named Popcorn.
They're so cute. So those things are very, very helpful. Also, when it comes to memory, like a lot of people will consider memory as the measure of learning.
Yeah.
Oh, can you remember the data? Right? Can you regurgitate what it is that you learned? So learning memory tricks, associative memory, mnemonics, drawing images, state-dependent memory, meaning, what state was I in when I actually learned it, and can I recall that by being in the same state?
Oh, that's
later.
good. Yeah, that's helpful.
Pretty huge.
Yeah.
That means that, if you normally have a cup of coffee every single day, well, and especially while you're studying, and then you go in for your test and you forget to get your cup of coffee, you've just decreased your chances of remembering the information.
Yeah.
If you tried to learn the information while you just had a terrible argument with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or your mom or your dad or whoever, the likelihood is that it's not going to go in. The information is going to not absorb in the way that it would if you were really paying attention.
Yeah.
And for that matter, really paying attention means convincing yourself that you're interested in it. If you keep saying to yourself, oh my God, this is so fucking boring, and you're complaining about it externally or internally the whole time, unless you can kind of turn that to your advantage somehow by saying, wow, this is so boring that I'm going to remember it. Wow, I hate this so much. And what do I hate about it specifically is all these components about it that I hate so much.
Yeah. Yeah. You're practicing the wrong thing for sure.
That might be a way to reframe that, but more or less, it's always better to be like, wow, how can I use this?
Yeah.
Where would be a situation where I might be using this later? Can I imagine myself having this conversation with someone, maybe describing it? Or what if I were tutoring someone in this very thing that I'm learning? How would I break this information down? So it causes you to restructure and go meta for a moment. You go beyond and outside the situation, looking at it. And it gives you a second or a third angle to look at the information from. And the more times you do this and the more different angles you create in your perception of the thing you're studying, the more three-dimensional and holographic that information becomes. You get layers of data rather than just one string.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like I've gone to continuing education courses for years, right? And the longer you go to them, the harder it is to find one that's interesting because you've kind of seen it all, you know? And yet it's a terrible experience to be sitting in a webinar or a class that's going to be all day long, maybe all weekend long, maybe all week long.
Yeah.
And to have that attitude of, oh, I already know this. I've already heard this 100 times. I've heard that it just doesn't work. But instead, what I found is I do what you were describing, and I'll play a little game like, okay, if a cat is waiting for a mouse, I'm going to be like that cat waiting for just one little morsel of new data that I hadn't heard before. I'm like, and then I'm alert because I'm waiting for it. Is this going to be it?
You're on the hunt.
Is this going to be it? Is it coming? Is it coming? And it's like, bingo! It took 4 hours, but I grasped something that I didn't know before, and boy, am I thankful to have that.
Yeah, that's great. The whole hunt for something that belongs to you.
Yeah,
like owning the information.
Totally,
absolutely.
Yeah, I loved what you said about recreating the same or similar state of mind that you had when you were learning the material, when you're being tested on the material or needing to use it. Something that reminded me of what you're describing, plus what we talked about earlier with using like essential oils and things like that, is there was a study done, this was years and years ago that I read about this, so I've forgotten the particulars, but essentially it was using a particular oil to create a smell. Let's say it's peppermint because it works well. And then every time you sit down to study that topic, a little bit of peppermint. Every time, just that topic. Then when you go to take that exam, little peppermint before you go to class.
Yeah.
And so now you have created this very unique experience that is clearly related to that one particular topic, that one particular exam that you need to get ready for. You
Yes.
know? And you could have different smells, different flavors for different topics.
You could.
That way you're helping to give your body a cue to get back into that state of mind. I love it.
Yeah, a note on that. Since it's to do with obviously limbic system and things like that, but also anchoring.
Oh,
Right?
yes. Anchoring,
So anchoring or triggering or building an association, however you want to put it. Just like Pavlov and his, the dogs, right?
Yeah.
There has to be consistency to it, at least in the formation stage. There has to be a certain level of exactness to the way you do it.
Okay.
Including making sure that you start the process of the association kind of as you're getting towards the peak of the feeling that you're trying to create.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So if you know that you're going to do this and you're preparing to do it, then you would wait for just a moment to where you feel subjectively like you're in that state of, I am switched on right
Beautiful.
now. I'm excited about this. I am ready to learn. I believe in myself. I love this topic. I'm going to frickin' kill this test. I'm going to nail it to the ground. I've got this.
Where's my peppermint oil?
And then you pull your, at this point where before it fades, because you don't want to catch it on the downswing, you want to catch it on the upswing,
Right.
you anchor that in with the smell.
God, that
And then you
is
just
such
proceed.
good advice.
And then you have to repeat
Yeah.
it. You have to repeat that a few times, and then your brain will get it. And then the next time you do it, it will remind you of
Yeah.
that. And you can always
Beautiful.
test it. In
love
fact,
it.
I encourage anyone who's doing this to test it. If you feel like you automatically feel that the association was built, then you've done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then of course it can get stronger and stronger. And anytime you feel like you're starting to get in the swing of things and you step into flow and you're really, really learning at that pace, you can anchor it even more.
Oh,
And
I
it just
love
gets
it.
stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You know, you had mentioned creating balanced breathing. And I think there are so many articles, so many videos about breathing that it's real easy for people to kind of get desensitized to the topic a little too much.
They undervalue it.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're having a crisis and somebody says, okay, now stop and take some deep breaths, and it just pisses you off.
Yeah, you're like, fuck off. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Looks like I don't know about deep breathing. Okay,
Yeah.
right. And I wanna caution people from falling into that trap, because all the same things that created a culture of paying attention to your breathing that we have now, that culture was once not there. It was only people with special knowledge that did that.
Yep.
And that special knowledge is now more common knowledge. So sometimes we need to take it a little deeper and stop and slow down. Just like when I said a little while ago, like you could, maybe a topic comes up that you've heard before. Well, let's keep listening with alertness to find that new thing in that topic. And you had mentioned something that I think would be new for a lot of people. And that's to go back to that idea of paying attention to your inhalations and exhalations and looking for some balance between those two. That's a more subtle piece to that I think would be easy to miss.
It's easy to miss and it's easy to practice,
Yes, it is.
which is what I love about it.
That's what's great. It's,
Because
it's
you
always
can
there.
walk into any situation practicing that, and it's not complicated.
Yeah.
It's just complicated enough to keep your attention.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
And
the other-
yeah.
I was just going to say, I usually teach that as a precursor to subdividing that one more time into 4 pieces.
Oh.
So first it's that. Actually, let me back up. The first is just simply exploring the breath and learning about how to pay attention to the breath, period.
Yeah.
Sensing and exploring the feeling of the breath, deepening the breath, learning how to move different parts of the physiology, like the diaphragm and the expanding the lower parts of the lungs outward and opening the chest and lengthening the spine, all that stuff.
That makes me want to do that right
That's
now.
first. But then once people understand that, really the first step is that twofold breathing method.
Okay.
And then I take that and say, okay, cool. You've got the inhalation and exhalation. You've got a sense of how to make it even. You're already doing enormous benefit to your nervous system right now. You're putting yourself in a great place. Now let's deal with something that takes a little bit more focus. Might be a precursor to meditation because it will really calm you down. It can help you to break up stubborn anxiety patterns, and allow you some room to then do some cognitive strategies to shift your thinking and reframe. And that is, you now focus on the spaces in between the breaths. Mm-hmm. So there's a place where you naturally finish your inhalation, and there's a moment where you could inhale again, or you could pause for a moment. That's the piece I'm talking about. And the same thing when you exhale completely and empty your lungs, there is a moment where you could inhale, or you could pause for a moment and just notice that space.
Yeah.
And what I tell people is, this isn't about forcing those spaces to become longer. It's about relaxing and noticing that you can allow them to expand. And what happens is they just naturally get longer. The distance and the space between your inhalation and your exhalation and your inhalation will naturally become longer. So the space will become bigger. So they often call this box breathing.
Yeah.
And so you can visualize a box in your mind. Mm-hmm. As the left side of the box, as you're drawing the upward angle, that's your inhalation. The line that goes across the top, like the roof, is your hold.
Your pause. Yeah,
your pause.
Okay, got it.
And then downward on the right-hand side is the exhalation. And then the bottom floor of the box is your hold in between inhaling again. And it's nice to have a little bit of a visual like that, because now you've begun to incorporate some visualization in that. It gives you a focus, all under the frame of this is going to relax you, calm you, focus you, destroy your anxiety, put you in a good place.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's fantastic. It's an easy thing to do. It's not complicated. And if you do that and you accidentally find yourself not thinking anymore, and there's periods of time that go by where you realize that you were doing nothing, I'm sorry, but you've been meditating.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
So sorry to inform you, but yeah, it's accidental meditation, that you kind of fall into because you just get absorbed in what you're doing fully.
That's great.
It's nice.
That's great.
Fall into the moment.
Yeah. A lot of people, and I'm one of them, I think you probably are too, when there's some practice that you've been doing for years and you have some experience with it and know that it works, and then later on you learn that there's some deeper understanding of science behind it, it helps it blossom even more.
Yeah.
And so here's one that goes along with breathing, because we're having this great conversation about breathing, is every time we inhale, and this is something that I think, there are plenty of people that know this, but the general population doesn't recognize this. You'd mentioned the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Is every inhalation is a discharge of sympathetic nervous system activity. Every time we inhale, our sympathetic nervous system fires. Every time we exhale, our parasympathetic nervous system fires. Every single breath throughout the day is sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic, and it keeps happening. You had talked about balancing breath or finding the balance within inhalations and exhalations, because you are literally creating balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. If your inhalation is excessive, you're experiencing excessive sympathetic nervous system activity. If your exhalations are long, you're getting more parasympathetic activity in your nervous system. As a general rule, people will recommend that you want to go ahead and lengthen your exhalations because we want to experience that more parasympathetic, nervous system. I think it's not that we will always want to be in that state. I like the idea of more balance, but understanding that by exhaling longer, we can facilitate more parasympathetic or rest and digest type of thing. If we need to wake up a little bit too, go ahead and increase your inhalations. Like, what do you do before you jump in a cold lake? Okay, here we go. We get ourselves ready, right? We're firing up our sympathetic nervous system to get ready to handle this thing that we need it for, right? And it's really empowering to recognize that just those simple acts of focusing on inhalation versus exhalation or creating balance between the two is right there at our fingertips anytime we want it.
That's so cool. I did, as you know, the Wim Hof training down in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I took a freezing cold shower this morning, in fact. Boy, it was cold.
Okay.
The water was particularly cold
I
today.
woke up cold this morning.
Yeah. But anyway, besides the benefits of that, because that does wake you up and it does make you more alert. It's a cognitive strategy for sure.
Yeah.
But, it wakes up mitochondrial actions in the cells, and there's all sorts of good things that it does for you. Alkalizes you temporarily more. But you become warmer. I think it encourages more circulation, and whenever you have that, you get better cognition. When you have better circulation. It helps.
Oh, definitely.
There's kind of like an association. But the breathing work, the breath training that comes along with the Wim Hof trainings is very interesting. It's a lot of deep, very rapidly taken breaths, mostly focusing on the inhale.
Okay.
And you do this, like 4 rounds of 10, and then as you exhale, you allow the accumulated oxygen in your blood to do the respirating for you. So you don't actually go in and out. You just kind of allow those oxygen molecules that are freely floating in your bloodstream to nourish you. And so you have to train yourself to relax, and you kind of hold yourself in this state of not inhaling, not exhaling, just staying there.
Okay.
And then that can go on for a minute and a half where you're not breathing in. You're just resting there. And then at some point, you will take another deep breath. And when that happens, you hold that for 30 to 40 seconds. And then you allow your breathing to go back to normal. You let your heart rate go back to normal. So you wait a couple of minutes, and then you do it again. You do like 3 rounds of that. And that is the program that they have for the basic breath work.
Okay.
And it does all sorts of things to your chemistry, according to the Navy SEAL guy who trained me to do it.
Okay.
He was a Wim Hof instructor.
Yeah.
And one of those things is that it releases various cortisols and adrenaline, forms of adrenaline, that are good to release on the temporary level.
Okay.
Like they say there's a range that's normal, and there's a range that's unhealthy. And then there's a range that's really good short term, just not long term.
Sure.
It's healthy to do it short term because of the changes it causes your body to do. Much like you can't be doing push-ups all day long without destroying yourself. It would hurt. It would damage you.
Yeah.
But the right amount causes you to become stronger.
That's great.
So that's an interesting kind of thing I learned about the breath, is that some types of breaths are they require a little more instruction and care, because they could be a little bit unhealthy for you if you did them wrong or you did them too much.
Yeah.
And this is why advanced breathing practices, yogic pranayama and various kinds of advanced breathing practices, require instruction, not just reading a book, because certain breaths may or may not be for you. Even Wim Hof, I think, is amazing. It's not for everyone, those types of breathing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's great, and I find great benefit to it. I also have had many, many years of doing breath exercises, and so I have more of a sense of when I should stop than maybe another person.
Sure.
They might keep pushing through it, and then they're finding that there's an issue. They pass out or something happens, right? Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is that the box breathing and the twofold breathing and any kind of deep breathing, mindfulness, all those things are more or less universal. Anyone can do those things who is a normally functioning adult.
Right.
It doesn't require that someone have any particular constitutional type or, whereas some breaths, like the breath of fire that you do in pranayama, that one. And that's something anyone could look up. It's not for everyone, and you certainly shouldn't do it all the time. And some constitutional types who have a lot of excess heat, not a good idea. Certain types of breath exercises and breath retention techniques, I feel like I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't mention this. Certain types of breath techniques, they can give you the ability to control physiological processes that are not normally under your control.
Sure.
Like to actually have control over your heartbeat, for example. And you shouldn't take on a practice like that without some mindfulness about, am I learning this properly? Am I applying wisdom? Do I really know that this particular breath exercise is right for me? Or did it just sound cool? I liked what I heard about it and I want to do it.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it sounds cool and it might be an instruction you might read in a book somewhere. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing for you.
Yeah. Like I could see a really cool lawnmower and then realize, wait a minute, I don't have a lawn. So I don't need that lawnmower.
Or what you mentioned in the previous episode about ginseng.
Oh, yeah.
It's not for everyone. There are conditions under which you don't want to take ginseng. In spite of the fact that there are wonderful stories about it as a longevity herb and how it can strengthen your virility and strengthen your power and all this kinds of stuff, lengthen your life. But it could imbalance you if you take it and it's not right for you. So with breathing exercises, there needs to be maturity, clarity, calmness, sanity when you go into it. It's not about pushing.
Yeah.
You don't want to push your body. It's more about gently coaxing your body.
Yeah, and it's also about checking in with yourself on the data you're getting.
Yeah.
And you using a feedback approach. You're like, am I on the right track? Is this working for me still?
For sure.
Good. Do I need to check anything? Do I need to learn something new? Do I need to ask somebody?
One of the reasons why I didn't do my breathing this morning, the Wim Hof breathing specifically, is because I got no sleep, and I always feel like it feels a little bit like I'm harming myself when I force myself to do breath work and I haven't had enough sleep.
Yeah.
I think in cases like that, it's more about getting more rest.
Yeah.
And making sure that I get maybe a nap that day, or I do some nourishing things and don't push it too hard. Because heart rate variability is like a condition that they begin to see when it's higher. When you have a higher heart rate variability, your ability to handle stress and to be resilient goes up.
Yeah.
And when it's lower, it doesn't. And there's a greater risk of health problems when you have a low heart rate variability, HRV. So anyone should look that up. It's pretty helpful to know about that. And you can improve your HRV through not pushing it on the days when you shouldn't, pushing it on the days when you should.
Yeah.
Go ahead and challenge your system on those days, but not on the days when your HRV is low.
Okay.
If you haven't had good sleep, good quality sleep, not just length of time, but quality of sleep, like we mentioned in the previous recording with David, that's so important.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And I just want to point out that we just did, Carlos just did an entire episode on enhancing cognitive abilities with almost no sleep last night.
Yeah.
So this stuff works.
It does.
This stuff works. Yeah.
It does.
I think there's plenty of strategies, not just tips and tricks for people, but things to incorporate into one's life. And some, from the last episode on nootropics and this episode on these more like body-based and like mind-based strategies for enhancing cognitive ability. A lot of things to practice. I would encourage people to go back and even write them down.
Yeah.
Make a list, speaking of cognitive abilities, categorize them, decide which ones you think resonate with you, decide which ones you want to start trying out first. Pay attention, see what you like. What do you want to keep using? What do you want to modify? And if you have any questions, the Authenticity Show likes emails.
We do. We love those.
We would love to get awesome questions about this stuff and then answer them.
Emails and comments on the videos. We love it.
Happy to get into that stuff with people. So, all right. I think we've done another episode here.
High five, Satch.
All right, my man. Very good.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. My name is Oliver Althoen. I produce the show. I also wrote our theme song, which you're listening to right now. Please subscribe to The Authenticity Show if you haven't already done so, wherever you get your podcasts. And connect with us on social media. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out our YouTube page. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening, and have an authentic day.